Welcome to this explainer. Now, did you know that 70% of wealthy families literally lose their entire fortune by the second generation? It's crazy, right? It's this fascinating financial paradox. We've all heard those super glamorous stories about how people make their money, taking massive risks, crazy startup exits, absolute strokes of genius. But looking at that 70% failure rate, it turns out there is a huge, monumental difference between making a fortune and actually keeping it. Because getting wealthy and staying wealthy, they require entirely different, almost totally opposite skill sets. So today, we're unpacking the exact blueprint used to preserve wealth across decades. Okay, let's dive into this. I really want you to reconsider your assumptions about wealth for a second. Most of us just assume that if you figure out how to make $1,000,000, boom, you've solved the money game forever. But the truth is, the financial world is just littered with people who struck it rich, only to lose the whole shebang. Think about, lottery winners or high-earning pro athletes who somehow find themselves completely bankrupt just a decade after retiring. The aggressive, risk-taking mindset that actually gets you to the top, it's often the exact same mindset that's going to drag you right back down to the bottom if you don't evolve. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll explore getting rich versus staying rich. Then we'll break down high income versus true wealth. Next up, the engines of wealth, followed by guarding your wealth. And finally, we'll wrap up with some actionable lessons for you to take away. All right, let's jump right into section 1, getting rich versus staying rich, the shift in mindset. So getting rich is basically an offensive game. It requires massive risk-taking, totally boundless optimism, aggressive growth, and essentially putting all your chips on the table. You really have to swing for the fences. But staying rich, well, that is a defensive game. It requires preservation, a healthy dose of paranoia, actually, and just a completely different psychological makeup. You have to pivot from swinging for the fences to carefully, meticulously protecting your lead. Because if you keep playing offense when you really should be playing defense, you're going to eventually strike out. Moving on to section 2, high income versus true wealth, breaking the illusion. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive divide between a high-income earner and a truly wealthy person. We all know that high-earning professional, right? Maybe a highly paid doctor or a corporate executive. Sure, they bring in a massive salary, but they also face the absolute highest tax burdens out there. Plus, they're super prone to spending whatever's left just to maintain a certain image. Now, a truly wealthy person, on the other hand, might not even look rich on the outside. They don't rely on a highly taxed salary. No, they rely on assets that are taxed incredibly favorably. Their entire focus is on retaining and compounding capital. Because let's face it, a huge paycheck doesn't make you wealthy if taxes and spending just zero out your bank account every single month. Let me ask you this. Think about the last time you got a raise. Did your savings rate actually go up? Or did you just start buying more expensive things, right? This is lifestyle inflation. It's that sneaky trap where your spending increases at the exact same rate as your income. And the ultra-rich are acutely aware of this trap. In fact, avoiding lifestyle inflation is one of their absolute most critical defensive strategies. They know that if their lifestyle costs keep scaling up identically with their income, well, they're just running faster on a hamster wheel. They're never actually accumulating true wealth. So, the core mistake that keeps the middle class from building wealth is what we call the cash flow trap. You see, the middle class often traps their capital in depreciating lifestyle upgrades that they mistakenly label as assets. Think of things like a massive house or a luxury car that constantly drains cash from maintenance and insurance. But a true asset doesn't drain your cash flow, it creates it. The wealthy relentlessly deploy their capital into vehicles that generate independent cash flow. They ruthlessly obsess over acquiring true assets, all while completely minimizing those lifestyle liabilities. Okay, on to section 3, the engines of wealth. Let's look at the mechanics of offense. Here's our hard truth. You cannot simply save your way to true wealth. Now, saving your money in a traditional bank account feels incredibly safe, I get it. But consider this. Due to inflation, a dollar from 20 years ago has lost roughly 40 to 50% of its purchasing power today. It's wild. By just holding cash, you are essentially guaranteed to silently lose value over time. Investing, on the other hand, allows your money to outpace inflation and grow exponentially through compound interest and market gains. The wealthy definitely don't just hoard cash under a mattress. They deploy it like an army to go out and capture more territory. So the crucial point is that the ultimate goal of all this capital deployment is passive income. It's really the only way to successfully separate your time from your money. Earnings generated with minimal daily effort on your part, that represents true financial freedom. Because when you're just trading hours for dollars, there is a hard cap on your earning potential. There are literally only 24 hours in a day. Passive income completely shatters that ceiling. It works for you while you sleep, while you travel, or while you're just hanging out with your family. And you know what? The wealthy don't just pick one of these vehicles. They build an entire cohesive ecosystem. For example, they might use businesses for active scaling and immense cash generation. Then they immediately push those profits straight into stocks and real estate for long-term appreciation and passive rents. And on top of all that, they leverage intellectual property, stuff like software, patents, or media, to create royalties that keep paying out decades after the initial work is actually done. They essentially weave these four engines together like a giant puzzle, so that each one reinforces and funds the others. Listen, in the world of wealth preservation, the number one is quite literally the most dangerous number there is. Relying on just one income stream, like a standard 9-to-5 job, is incredibly fragile. If that one stream dries up, you are completely ruined. The wealthy approach this by building these fortified, diversified defensive walls made up of multiple income streams using that interconnected ecosystem we just talked about. So if the stock market takes a dive, well, the real estate is still paying rent. If a business has a slow quarter, no big deal. Their intellectual property just keeps paying out those royalties. All right, that brings us to Section 4, guarding your wealth, the defense. Now, you might be surprised to hear that the foundation of this defense isn't actually a financial tool. It's a psychological one. I'm talking about delayed gratification. This is the discipline to resist an immediate, smaller reward in favor of a much larger, long-term outcome down the road. It's basically the psychological shield that protects the rich from immediate, wasteful consumerism. I mean, we all know how incredibly tempting that Amazon Prime one-click ordering can be at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, right? But this discipline is exactly what stops them from buying a depreciating liability today so they can acquire a cash-flowing asset tomorrow. Long-term thinking is absolutely the ultimate superpower of wealth preservation. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how these specific strategies form an invisible force field around assets. The wealthy use perfectly legal tax methods to optimize exactly how much they get to keep. And they don't just network to find a new job, they leverage relationships to uncover exclusive off-market deals and connect with expert advisors. And perhaps most importantly, they aggressively commit to continuous financial education. They know the rules of money are always changing and ignorance is absolutely the fastest way to lose a fortune. Which leads us to our final part. Section 5, actionable lessons for you. Let's apply this blueprint. Let's move to the practical side and see how this builds your own personal defense. Here is your actionable blueprint. Step 1, start aggressively prioritizing assets over liabilities. Seriously, stop trapping your money in things that continually drain your pocket. Step 2, you've got to shift your mindset from merely saving cash to strategically investing it so you can actually beat inflation. Step 3, don't ever rely on just one paycheck. Start building multiple streams of income, no matter how small they might be at first. And finally, step 4, treat your continuous financial education as your single most important asset. If you take nothing else away from this explainer, please let it be this core thesis right here. True wealth is not just about the size of the check you deposit. No way. It is entirely about the money you keep, the money you actively protect from inflation and poor decisions, and the money you intentionally grow through smart, patient mechanics. Retention and ongoing financial education, those are the true keys to the kingdom. So, we've looked at the psychology, we've looked at the mechanics, and the defensive strategies of those who successfully preserve their wealth. The knowledge is in your hands now. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative question. What is the one financial habit you will change today to start protecting your future wealth? Seriously, take a moment, think about it, and then take action. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you next time.